Before we start, please make sure to like this video and hit this subscribe button, so you never miss a story like this. And also comments where you are watching from, how many sons and daughters you have. Thanks.
My name is Jordan West. And I swear to you, I never thought mowing my own front lawn would turn into a full-blown neighborhood emergency. You don't belong here, she shrieked from across the street, holding her phone like it was a weapon. I'm calling the police. I paused mid-push with my mower, sweat pouring down my forehead, confused as hell. Excuse me? This is my yard. She stormed across the sidewalk like she owned the whole block, blonde bob bouncing, phone still pressed to her ear. You're trespassing. This is a private community, and you're not one of us. I could hear the 911 operator on the other end now. She was actually doing it. There's a suspicious black man outside a home on Willow Court. Yes, he looks aggressive. I don't know what he's doing here. That's when I lost it. Lady, are you serious right now? I live here. You're standing on my property. She pointed a shaking finger at me. Then prove it. Because I know everyone on this street. And I've never seen you before. My heart was pounding. Not from the yard work, but from rage. I just closed on this house 2 weeks ago. I'd worked for years to make it happen, double shifts, skipped meals, never a vacation. But apparently, none of that mattered. Not here. Because people like me? We had to prove we belonged. While people like her got to assume they owned the place. Her name was Cheryl, but everyone in the HOA whispered about her like a legend, Karen with a clipboard. She patrolled the sidewalks like she was the sheriff of the suburbs, reporting people for wrong-colored curtains or parking 2 inches past the curb. But today? Today she picked the wrong yard to step on. I stepped toward her, slowly, holding my hands out, not because I was a threat, but because I knew how this looked. Tall black man. Angry. Upset. On a pristine street where every mailbox matched and everyone knew each other. You need to hang up that phone. Right now. She narrowed her eyes. Or what? You'll do something to me? You're scaring me. I feel threatened. That word. Threatened. Like she was already rehearsing her victim statement. Like she wanted sirens, a spotlight, a scene. You feel threatened by a lawn mower and a deed with my name on it? She flinched like I'd slapped her. The 911 operator asked a question, and Cheryl turned away from me to answer, still trembling, still talking like I was some escaped convict on her tulip-lined street. I took a deep breath. Then I did something she didn't expect. I walked inside, calm and slow, and came back out holding the folder. The one with my name. The one with the title. The deed. The bank statements. The closing letter. All of it. I held it out toward her like a shield. Here. Since you need proof so bad. My name's Jordan West. That's my name on this paper. That's my name on that mailbox. And that's my name on the deed. She hesitated. Her eyes darted to the paper, then back to me. For a second, just a second, I thought she might back down. But then the police pulled up. Blue lights. 2 cars. Doors flung open. Guns almost drawn. I froze. Hands where we can see them, one of them shouted, jumping out like I was about to rob my own garage. I dropped the folder. Raised my hands. I live here. I was mowing my lawn. She called you because she thinks I don't belong. One officer picked up the papers. He skimmed through them while Cheryl stood back, arms crossed, smug satisfaction written all over her face. He read silently. Then looked up at me. Is this your house, sir? Yes. It is. Bought it 2 weeks ago. Moved in last Saturday. Would you like to see my ID too? Or maybe the key to the front door? The younger cop looked toward Cheryl. Ma'am, Did you verify any of this before calling 911? He just looked out of place, she snapped. You don't understand, this is a private neighborhood. The older officer turned to her now. Ma'am, calling the police on a homeowner without cause can be considered a misuse of emergency services. Her face turned a shade paler. Wait, what? I was just trying to keep the neighborhood safe. The officer shook his head. From a man mowing his lawn? There was silence. A long, awkward silence. And then, something broke inside me. All the humiliation, the anger, the stares I'd already been getting every morning since I moved in, it boiled over. You don't get to make me feel like a criminal on my own property. Not you. Not this HOA. Not anybody. I stepped forward and picked up my deed again, gripping it tight like a badge. I worked my ass off for this house. No handouts. No favors. Just years of sacrifice. And if that makes you uncomfortable, maybe it's you who doesn't belong here. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. For once, Karen had no comeback. The officers walked back to their cars. One of them nodded at me, not in pity, but almost like respect. And Cheryl? She turned and walked back across the street, face flushed, phone still in hand, but this time, she didn't look so smug. Call to action. If you've ever been judged just for existing, for the color of your skin, the way you look, or where you stand, know this, your worth isn't measured by anyone else's discomfort. Let them stare. Let them doubt. Because the truth? It doesn't need permission to speak. Don't let anybody make you feel like you don't belong in a space you work to build. You'd think after something like that, she would have backed off. That she would have realized she was wrong and left me alone. But no. That woman didn't just walk away, she doubled down. The next morning, I woke up to a bright orange violation notice taped to my door. Not mailed. Not placed gently in the mailbox. Taped. Dead center. Right across my new front door like a warning shot. Improper lawn maintenance, it said. Unauthorized exterior equipment. And my personal favorite, suspicious behavior reported by board member. I stood there in my boxers, holding the paper, laughing to myself because it was so damn obvious. This wasn't about lawn height or tools. This was retaliation. I knew the HOA had power, but I didn't realize just how far people like Cheryl were willing to go to keep people like me in line. The thing is, I didn't move into this neighborhood to prove anything. I moved in because I earned it. Because after growing up in a 2-bedroom apartment with 4 siblings and a leaky roof, this place was a symbol. A symbol that I made it. That my sacrifices meant something. That my mom didn't work 2 jobs for nothing. But now? I could feel her eyes on me every time I pulled into the driveway. Clipboard in hand. Watching. Waiting for a slip-up. It wasn't just her either. The neighbors started whispering. First it was the white couple across the street who used to wave but suddenly stopped. Then it was the guy with the American flag who gave me the head nod but wouldn't make eye contact anymore. And don't get me wrong, not everyone was like that. The Garcia family 2 houses down invited me over for dinner. The teen kid next door asked if I needed help moving furniture. But the ones with power? They made sure I knew exactly where I stood. 2 days later, Cheryl knocked on my door. Clipboard. Lipstick. Glasses perched like a villain in a courtroom drama. I didn't answer. But she stood there anyway, arms folded, tapping her foot until I finally opened it. Good morning, she said with a tone that was anything but. Can I help you? I asked, flatly. She handed me a form. We've scheduled an emergency HOA hearing regarding your behavior and property standards. You're required to attend Thursday at 6 p.m. I blinked. You're serious? Deadly, she replied. The board has received multiple complaints. She didn't say who filed them. She didn't have to. I could practically smell the fake perfume and pettiness leaking from her clipboard. She turned and walked away like she'd won. Like this was a game and I'd just moved into the wrong level. And maybe I had. But I wasn't about to lose. See, what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had receipts. Literal receipts. Pictures, footage, legal documents, voice memos. I didn't grow up in a world where you hoped people would believe you. I grew up in a world where you recorded everything in case they didn't. I called my attorney that afternoon. Jordan, he said, you want to fight this the right way? Let them hang themselves. Just show up. Keep your cool. And when they start making fools of themselves, you drop the hammer. That became my plan. But inside, I was boiling. Boiling because the little boy in me, the one who used to stand in line for free lunch, he still wanted to be accepted. Boiling because I knew no matter how successful I became, some people would only ever see me as a threat. Boiling because I thought I bought peace, but what I got was war. Thursday came fast. And that night, when I stepped into the HOA meeting room, it felt like walking into a courtroom designed just for me. Half the board sat there with tight smiles and tighter suits. Cheryl was in the center like a proud queen, ready to pass judgment. I took a seat, calmly, folder in hand. She cleared her throat dramatically. Mr. West, we've called this meeting to address several concerns raised by our community. Would you like to respond before we proceed? I looked her dead in the eye. Yes. I'd like to make one thing very clear. I'm not going anywhere. And the next time anyone accuses me of not belonging here, I'll be ready to show this. I pulled out the deed again and placed it on the table. With my name. My signature. My ownership. And your silence. She didn't flinch. But I saw the twitch in her eye. The flicker of frustration. Because she knew. She knew this wouldn't be the end. And neither did I. But I was done letting people like Cheryl decide my story. You could have heard a pin drop. The room went still the second I placed that deed on the table. Even the smug guy in the back, the one who kept adjusting his Rolex like it was a personality trait, froze mid-smirk. Cheryl stared at it like it was a threat, and to her, it was. Because that deed? That wasn't just paper. It was proof. Proof that I wasn't just passing through. Proof that I belonged here, legally, financially, and unapologetically. She cleared her throat again, flustered now, lips twitching at the edges. Mr. West, ownership alone doesn't exempt you from the community guidelines. And accusations without evidence don't justify harassment, I replied, cool but firm. Another board member, bald guy, probably in real estate, jumped in, trying to steer things back to safe territory. Let's all stay calm. We're just here to clarify a few matters. But Cheryl wasn't done. No, people like her never are. She reached into her folder, pulled out a photo. Grainy, low resolution, looked like it was taken from someone's phone at 3 a.m. This, she said, holding it up like a trophy, was submitted by a concerned resident. It appears to show you bringing in unfamiliar individuals late at night. I almost laughed. You mean the moving crew? A group of men, she emphasized, who were not registered guests and did not sign into the HOA visitor system. I stared at her for a long moment. You're asking me to report the race and name of my movers? No one breathed. Not a single sound. Cheryl's face went pale. But I wasn't done. And since we're playing the photo game, I opened my folder and slid out 3 glossy prints. Here's your car, Cheryl. Parked in a red zone for over 6 hours. 3 weekends in a row. Want to talk about community standards now? Her jaw tightened. The bald guy adjusted his tie. I could feel the board shifting. They weren't used to someone fighting back, especially not someone they expected to fold. But then it happened. The moment that turned the entire room upside down. A voice spoke up from the back. Quiet at first. Shaky. I think there's something the board needs to hear. We all turned. It was Linda, the treasurer. Mid-50s, always quiet, rarely looked anyone in the eye. But tonight? She was trembling, holding a manila envelope like it might catch fire in her hands. Cheryl's eyes locked onto her like daggers. Linda, don't. But it was too late. Linda stepped forward, placed the envelope on the table, and opened it with a slow breath. These are recordings of board meetings Cheryl held in private. Without a quorum. Without minutes. Discussing, targeting. I leaned forward. Targeting who? Linda looked right at me. You. A collective gasp swept across the room. One woman covered her mouth. The bald guy leaned back like he'd just witnessed a crime, which, honestly, he had. Cheryl stood up, furious now. This is absurd. You can't just play it, I said. Right now. Linda pulled out her phone, cued the audio, and hit play. Cheryl's voice filled the room. He's too flashy. Loud. I don't care what the papers say, that house doesn't fit him. We need to make it difficult. Push violations. Make him uncomfortable until he wants to sell. Silence. Utter silence. Then came her laugh. On the recording. Sharp, mean, unmistakable. Trust me. They never last long around here. That was it. The moment it all snapped. Cheryl's mask shattered like glass. The board erupted. People shouting over one another. Someone in the back stood up and demanded she resign. The bald guy started texting furiously. The HOA secretary began packing her bag like she wanted no part of this mess. And Cheryl? She tried to spin it. That was taken out of context. I stood up. No. That was exactly the context. I walked up to the center table, picked up my deed, and looked at every single person in the room. My name is Jordan West. I'm a homeowner here. I've followed every rule. Paid every fee. And I refuse to be run out of my own house by bigotry wrapped in bureaucracy. I turned to Cheryl. You don't speak for this neighborhood anymore. And that was the moment she knew she had lost. Not because I yelled. Not because I threatened. But because I stood my ground, with truth. And the truth always burns. I should have known she wouldn't go down easy. People like Cheryl never do. It wasn't even 24 hours after the HOA hearing that the first retaliation came. A bright orange violation notice taped to my front door, oversized, loud, impossible to miss. In big, bold letters it said, "Potential illegal renovation, cease activity immediately." I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. There was no renovation. No hammer, no saw, not even a paintbrush had touched the place in days. But I knew exactly what this was. Cheryl's last card, bureaucracy. If she couldn't humiliate me in public, she'd try to drown me in red tape behind the scenes. I tore the notice down, marched right to the HOA office, and demanded answers. The girl at the front desk, young, nervous, flinched when she saw me coming. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. Who approved this? I asked, holding up the violation. She glanced around, then leaned in like she was whispering a confession to a priest. It wasn't approved, she just told me to print it. I blinked. She, who? Cheryl, she whispered. She still has access to the system. That's when I realized, Cheryl wasn't just playing dirty. She was playing desperate. She didn't care if she broke rules. She didn't care who saw. The walls were closing in, and when people like Cheryl get cornered, they reach for anything they can still control. Even if it means dragging others down with them. I should have walked away. Called a lawyer. Let the board handle it. But something in me snapped. Not in anger, in resolve. I wasn't going to survive this. I was going to win. So I went home, poured a coffee, and sat down with a plan. I pulled up every email, every message, every notice from the HOA over the last year, and I started connecting dots. Patterns. Violations that didn't exist. Complaints that were never filed. My visitor logs edited without consent. And then I found it. One line in the database that shouldn't have been there. Restricted, board directive to monitor Lot 17. Forward all notes to Cheryl P. Lot 17. My house. My blood ran cold. She hadn't just been targeting me, she had authorized surveillance. That's when I called Linda. And to my surprise, she answered on the first ring. I figured you'd call, she said softly. Tell me everything, I said. Please. And she did. It all came out. How Cheryl manipulated the board. How she bullied them into silence. How she'd flagged families of color as suspicious in her private logs. How she'd forced violations through without votes. It was deeper than I'd ever guessed. But then Linda said something that stopped me. She's done this before, she whispered. To someone else. Who? Her own sister. That's when the twist hit like a truck. Cheryl's own sister, Marla, used to live in this neighborhood. 5 years ago. Same smile. Same eyes. But they'd had a falling out, and rumor had it, Cheryl ran her out. I hung up, heart pounding. And 2 days later, I found Marla. Not by chance. She found me. Knocked on my door like she'd been waiting for this moment. Tall. Graceful. Looked like Cheryl, if Cheryl had warmth in her bones. I heard what happened, she said, stepping inside without fear. It's time somebody did something. I stared at her. Why now? She held up her phone and smiled grimly. Because she went too far this time. And I have everything. Photos. Emails. Even voice recordings. Proof that Cheryl used HOA funds for personal expenses. That she tampered with ballots. That she threatened Marla into leaving by filing a false restraining order, just so she could steal her house for cheap. And now? She was about to lose it all. Marla and I didn't go to the board. Not yet. We went to the city. Because this wasn't an HOA problem anymore. This was fraud. Criminal. Documented. Prosecutable. Cheryl's last card turned out to be a wild bluff, and we had a royal flush. But before we let it drop, I gave her one last chance. One final meeting. Her. Me. Marla. And Linda. In the same room. Cheryl walked in wearing her usual pearls, holding her chin high, pretending the world hadn't caved in. But the second she saw her sister sitting next to me, that confidence vanished. She stopped walking. Her eyes narrowed. What is she doing here? Marla stood up. To watch you fall. There's something strange about watching someone like Cheryl finally lose control. You expect it to be loud, screaming, rage, maybe even violence. But when the meeting started, when the evidence was laid out on the table, the receipts, the email logs, the misuse of funds, Cheryl didn't say a word. She just sat there. Blinking. Pale. Like the truth had physically slapped her across the face. Marla kept her voice steady. You ruined lives, Cheryl. Not just mine. Not just his. But dozens of families. Linda slid a folder across the table. And we're done covering for you. This is going to the city attorney. Every file. Every voice note. Every altered HOA vote. Still, silence. Not denial. Not anger. Just that sick, stunned stare, like she couldn't believe the world dared to push back. She tried once, one last attempt to claw her way out. It was protocol. I followed our bylaws. Everything I did was for the safety of the neighborhood. I leaned forward, calm and measured. You called 911 because I didn't look like I belonged. You harassed families. You stole from them. That wasn't safety. That was ego. And now, it's over. The next 48 hours moved fast. Faster than I ever expected. Linda turned in her resignation, not out of guilt, but solidarity. I should have spoken up sooner, she said. But I won't stay quiet now. The board called an emergency meeting, one I was officially invited to, this time, and by a unanimous vote, Cheryl was removed. All access revoked. HOA card disabled. Legal proceedings started. And the biggest twist? The news picked it up. Channel 8. Local but viral. HOA president accused of racial harassment and fraud. My face blurred. Cheryl's? Front and center. Standing in her driveway. Screaming at the reporter. No comment. Get off my property. I said, get OFF. The whole country saw it. So did her employers. So did her neighbors. So did her family. By the weekend, she was packing. Box by box, shoving her perfect life into cardboard. Gone was the pearl necklace. The garden gloves. The fake smile. She didn't even look up when I walked by that morning. But I did. I stood right on my driveway, my property, the one with my name on the deed, and I said, just loud enough for her to hear. Funny how things work out, huh? She froze. Didn't turn around. But I knew she heard me. And I knew that was enough. But I didn't celebrate. Not the way I thought I would. Because when someone like Cheryl falls, it doesn't feel like justice. It feels like relief. The kind that leaves you breathing different. Standing taller. Finally sleeping through the night without worrying who might try to take what you earned. And the best part? The neighborhood changed. Kids waved at me again. People stopped by with welcome baskets, real ones this time. A teacher, a nurse, a retired vet. One guy even said, we didn't know how bad she was, but we're glad you stayed. That one hit me. Because I almost didn't. I almost gave up. But now? Now I knew why I was meant to stay. Because people like Cheryl bank on silence. And I'd been quiet too long. 3 weeks after Cheryl left, I got a letter in the mail. Official HOA letterhead. But this time, my name wasn't being called out. It was being offered. They wanted me to take her place. Not as some honorary figure. Not for show. But as president. The same title Cheryl had clung to like a crown. The same role she'd weaponized to keep people like me out, they wanted to hand it over, to me. I read the letter twice. 3 times. And then I laughed. Not because it was funny. But because if Cheryl saw it, and I'm sure she did, this would be her worst nightmare. Her biggest fear wasn't being exposed. It was being replaced. Especially by someone she tried to erase. I met with the board that weekend. They were nervous, like I might say no. But I didn't. I said yes. Not for revenge. Not to wear the crown. But because if someone like her could get that far by hurting others, then maybe someone like me could go even further by protecting them. I got to work fast. First thing I did, I changed the bylaws Cheryl had manipulated to gatekeep. No more secret voting. No more community appearance standards that were code for discrimination. We even set up a diversity panel, led by neighbors who'd never had a voice. Then came the real challenge. Rebuilding trust. Especially with the families Cheryl had pushed out or shut down. So I showed up. To barbecues. School board meetings. Cleanup days. No clipboard. No power trip. Just me. Jordan. The guy who belonged here, not because of a title. But because I never stopped fighting for this place, even when it fought me back. One Saturday, while I was helping repaint a playground fence, a little girl tugged my sleeve. She couldn't have been more than 7. "You're the president, right?" she asked. I nodded. "That's what they say." She smiled. "My mom says you made the neighborhood safe again." I don't know why that hit me harder than anything else. But it did. Because she was right. Not about me being some hero, but about what safety really means. It's not a security patrol or a gated code. It's knowing the people around you see you, respect you, protect you, even when you're not watching. That's what Cheryl never understood. And that's why she lost everything. Not because I took it from her, but because she built her power on fear. And I built mine on truth. My name is Jordan. And the deed didn't just have my name on it. So did the future. Because I didn't just prove I belonged here. I made sure everyone else could belong, too. No matter what they looked like. No matter where they came from. No matter how loud the Karens scream. If you ever felt underestimated, disrespected, or told you don't belong, just remember, the loudest people aren't always right. And sometimes, the best revenge is becoming the thing they feared most, someone who rises anyway. Share this with someone who needs a reminder. Your story is not over yet.